Hey everybody, welcome to the In All Things podcast. It's time to see God in everything.
Well, welcome to the In All Things podcast. I am Christy Johnson, and I've kind of taken over the podcast today in place of Mitch. And I have a very special guest with me today.
Emphasis on very.
Very. I mean, he might kind of look like me. So this is my son, Tucker, and we wanted to bring you a different aspect on a Mother's Day podcast. So I thought what better than to bring the person that made me a mother for the first time. So tell us just a little bit about yourself.
My name is Tucker Johnson. I am Christy's son. Grew up in this church and went to college in Virginia at Liberty University, and now
Go Flames.
Go Flames, on fire for Christ. And I currently work as the worship and social media director at X Church. It's a church about 10 minutes from here, in Canal, Winchester. And I am married to Anna, and we have a little cat named Binks who made Anna a mother. And we live in Canal. Just bought a house. Lots of exciting stuff right now.
A lot of exciting stuff going on. Buying your first house is awesome, and it's close to us. So I'm super thankful for that. I don't know what I would do if you moved away. So we're going to get started with just some Mother's Day stuff first. So I just have some stuff. Tucker has no idea what I'm talking about. He didn't want to know. He just wanted to wing it. So hopefully he doesn't regret that. So let's talk about this. So first of all, I had two sons, Brock and Tucker, and of course I'm married to Terry. And so living in a house with three boys, I kind of always felt like I was spoiled. You guys decorated the house. Like, what are your memories of like actual Mother's Day, what you did for us?
Mother's Day. I feel like we would always do coupons. That was our thing. Like, we would make you little coupons that was like, we will unload the dishwasher. Just use your coupon.
Did you follow through on this?
Probably not. Brock probably did. I probably didn't.
True.
And we would put like streamers and flowers.
Yes.
And
you guys were great.
Brock would like make you breakfast, like toast, and bring it up.
Yes. Great at making me feel special. I lost my mom in 2008, so Mother's Day is always a little bittersweet. But I was trying to think about my favorite gifts that I've gotten. And so I'm a sucker for homemade gifts. If you guys made me something, I loved it. But recently, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago, you got me some Air Force Ones. And I think that's my favorite gift. I wear those babies.
I forgot.
I love those Air Force Ones. So let's talk honestly, all right? So a lot of people know me because I work here and they see me on stage doing the welcome and all running around all the time. So you can be honest about this stuff, I think. What was I like as a mom? Let's start out like when you're in elementary school. What are your memories of like me and my mothering?
In elementary school, I feel like what comes to mind is how present you were in like every aspect. So you were like the mom that came into the school and cut up, the crafts, or like did our multiplication tests and all that. Like that's what I remember in elementary, is that you were always around. You were always at every sporting event. I did theater when I was little, and they would be downtown Columbus, and you would drive me sometimes even to Dublin, like 4 or 5 nights a week, and you just did it because I wanted to do it and I thought it was fun.
And now you actually have said to me before, why did you do that for me?
I feel like as an adult, I'm like, if my kid was like, I want to do a play in Dublin, I'd be like, no,
yeah, you're
not going to do that. But yeah, that's what I remember, is you would just do whatever you could, however much you could. I have this distinct memory of Groovy Day. I think I told you this. In elementary school, I didn't have a tie-dye shirt or something. I didn't have anything to be groovy, and I was so sad about it. I thought it was the end of the world. And so you went down to your little scrapbook station and got me these groovy stickers to put on my shirt, and you were like, or maybe you bought them, I forget, but you were like, you don't have a tie-dye shirt, but here, you can at least have this.
And you were groovy.
Yeah.
Yes.
I sure was groovy.
So what about middle school? What about middle school? Middle school is a hard time for kids.
Yeah, middle school was hard for me in particular because I wasn't like super sporty, good at any sports at all.
You were good. You just didn't care about it.
Yeah. And I had a hard time. I was in public school for 6th grade and just had a really hard time with it. And I remember the conversations about looking at a private school for a little bit. And so I ended up going to private school for 2 years, which was like a big sacrifice for you guys because it moved everything like extracurricular, even though I was in those downtown places, like sporting. I didn't do sports, like choir concerts and extra, like, family fun nights they have. Instead of being like 2 minutes down the road, it was like 30 minutes down the road. And you guys just did it. And that's what I feel like I remember most about middle school.
And do you feel like that was a great move for you?
It was great. I was definitely glad I didn't go there in high school, but it was good for middle school.
Yeah. So moving on to high school. What was high school like? And
high school.
How was my mothering in high school?
High school, I feel like the transition to high school, I wanted to stay at the Christian school because I had friends, but you knew it'd be best for me to go to public school, and I loved high school. I feel like I just thrived. I had awesome friends, and I feel like our relationship, like our house was always the house. Like we had homecoming dinners at our house, and we had prom dinners. Like everything was you just always let me have my friends around, like in the hot tub till 4 a.m. and being crazy. And I even remember like you would get on our like senior tag. We did that, which if you don't know what senior tag is, it's a really odd game that seniors in Central Ohio. Did you know it's only in Ohio?
No, I didn't know that.
So anyway, it's a game where you run around and try to squirt each other with a squirt gun to get out. And if you can't get out if you're in your boxers or your
if you're a girl and you're in your sports bra and your underwear.
And so we'd have kids like half naked running around our house. And
hiding in your dad's pickup truck.
You were all about it. Like I just remember you were all in. And
that's that competitiveness.
Yeah. Same with like musicals though. You never missed one. You were always there. But yeah.
What about, was I a strict parent to you? Was I a easy parent? Was I do whatever you want? Or
you were pretty strict.
Yeah.
I remember when I first got my license, you guys told me like for every minute that I was late, I would be grounded from my car. And that's pretty crazy. Like you don't think that people would follow through on that, but I sure was like 15 minutes late, and you took my car away for 15 days.
You sure did. I remembered your Play-Doh. Were you too young to remember that? That was traumatic for me.
You threw it all away, right?
Yes, I told you several times, if you don't put that away, I'm throwing it away. And you would not put it away. And so I was thinking about all the money I'd spent on all these Play-Doh things, and I sure did throw it away. But from then on, you listened to me and you knew I was going.
Another childhood memory I have is I had nightmares from the game Clue when I was little. And I remember we had this like big moment where in the middle of the night we threw it in the trash can and all my nightmares went away. Like I still remember that.
And it worked. Yeah. Yes. Well, that's good.
But yeah, you were strict.
Yeah, strict. But do you appreciate that now?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we have a great relationship. Excuse me. We've been very close. We've talked about everything, all the things, even some things I wasn't really prepared to talk about with you. We've been on trips together. It was just fun. You were a fun kid. You were very sensitive and caring and creative from the time you were born. Like you, when you're 4, you always wanted to do shows for us, and we had to sit down and watch the show. And sometimes there was no plot to it, and we lost our patience. And you were I knew you were going to be some kind of performer. I thought maybe theater, because you were just so good in theater, but you were just done with that after high school.
Yeah, thank God.
You were an easy kid for grades. You just got good grades. Never had to hound you. Never had to, sit down and make you do homework. You were just easy. I'm so thankful for that too. But I remember when you were first born, and you're, my only child, and I was home with you all the time, and got pregnant for Brock. And I'm like, I'll never be able to love another child as much as I love him. Like I was so nervous, and what am I going to do if I don't like this new baby? And, Brock came along, and somehow God just makes extra room for extra love and in your heart. And so I love being a mom. I loved all the things about being a mom, especially when you're young. I loved coming into school. I loved having all your friends over. It was just, I loved all of it. I mean, there were some hard times seeing you go through sad times, and there was nothing I could do about it. Hard things like that. Yes. So now you're married, and kind of mind blowing for me. Got married last
for 9
year.
months, almost.
Yes. And I love Anna, which is super helpful. She's just wonderful. She's go like we are. She fits in like I would want. But that was really hard for me. It was hard for me to realize that I was not going to be the number one girl in your life anymore, which is how it's supposed to be. We're supposed to raise you and train you. And I think how do you think your dad did modeling like what it's like to be a father and a husband? And
he's the best. I feel like our relationship more so now is way stronger than it's ever been, because I feel like I have questions, or I don't know, even like the whole engagement process, like he was like my person that I asked all the questions to, like why is this happening, or is this normal, or
Yeah.
Is it okay that we fight all the time sometimes when we were dating? And he'd be like, yes, it's okay. But we've grown so much closer now, but looking back, I don't think I understood like how good of a role model he was until now. Like there's things that I just naturally do, like for Anna, or like I naturally think that was ingrained in me even from like a young age. But looking back, like he was the best dad. He was such a good role model for like being a good husband and even being like a good friend. Like he's just the best person ever. And so looking back, I can see all those times in my life that he was that and I didn't know it.
Yeah, he used to say something to you guys all the time that I would think would hurt your feelings, but I don't know if you remember this. We just talked about it. He would say to you, like, when you would say, who's your favorite? And what would he say?
He'd be like, your mom's my favorite.
He would always say,
come on.
Because you're going to leave me someday and she's not. And I think that's so important to model that to your kids because when we put, obviously God should be first, but when we put our kids above our spouse, that's not how it's made to be. And eventually those kids are going to go away. And if you're left with nothing, then no relationship, and that's tough. So, okay, so now I pulled up some fun little quiz questions. So, you see on Facebook those quizzes where people ask their kids questions about them. So I want you to like rapid fire answer these. First thing comes to your mind. Okay.
You might hurt your feelings.
I know, you might hurt my feelings. I'm prepared. What is my favorite thing to do?
Go to Mexico.
Yes, that is a very good thing. You're right. What am I really good at?
Anything like event planning or like experience planning, like vacation planning, like planning, I guess.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say cleaning because I am a good cleaner.
And good cleaning.
What am I not so good at?
I don't know.
It's funny. I found something like this that you did when you were younger, and you said I was not good at playing the piano, which is a true story.
Playing the piano. We'll say that. Same.
Yes. What is my favorite food?
Dang. Like steak?
Sure.
No. Tacos?
I do love tacos.
Pizza.
Yes.
Took me a minute.
That would be an easy one. What kind of movies do I like?
You like scary movies?
Yes.
And you like comedy movies, like sometimes inappropriate comedy movies.
True. I love scary movies, and you love scary movies. But fun fact, your dad does not like scary movies, so I don't get to watch them unless you watch them with me. What's something I always say or always said to you growing up?
Well, obvious, every day is a gift.
Yeah.
One thing that comes to mind right away is you told me my eyes turned white when I lied. Like I still remember that.
Yes,
and I really
believed it.
But I feel like even now the only thing you can control is you. Yes. And I would call you so mad. You're like, well, good thing that you can control how you respond.
Which is not what you wanted to hear. I thought you might say, make good decisions.
Make good decisions.
I used to say that when you went to school all the time. What is your favorite thing that I cook?
Steak. That's probably why I said steak.
Yeah, steak. What makes me happy?
Being with your family and like doing fun stuff, like going out with your friends or that kind of thing.
What makes me sad?
Cleaning out Brock's room.
Yes.
And when me or your dad are sad, or my dad are sad. Your dad.
My dad.
Maybe too.
Yeah. Yes. What makes me angry?
When I don't reply to your text.
True. That is true.
Or when I say I'm going to do something and I don't do it.
Okay. I didn't think you'd go that way, but okay. If I had $1 million, what would I do with it?
You'd probably give it away.
Yeah, probably.
Or like go to Mexico for a year and then give the rest away.
Yeah. Yes, very good. What would you do with $1 million if you had it?
Oh, I don't even know. Build a house.
$1 million house?
Yeah.
Yeah. With a room for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some useful things that I have taught you?
Useful things that I have is just to give back and to be others focused. I feel like you are very others focused, and if you would do anything if someone else wanted to do it, and I think I am not. I mean, I guess we all are selfishly like driven, but to die to yourself and not, it's not all about me, I guess is what I would say.
Yep. I think a useful thing you're finding is I've taught you how to cook because you cook more than Anna cooks. Yeah.
And I had a dad that's like a master chef. He can cook anything and everything, and it's so good. And so he would like cook like 4-course breakfast before school. So she never had to cook. And so I went to college and learned how to cook pretty quickly.
And she's probably going to mow the grass in your new house.
Yeah.
Because you never wanted to do that.
She will mow the grass and clean.
Okay, let's see. What makes you proud of me?
I think the Brock Strong Foundation obviously is an easy one. But just how, you have, as a mom, faced some of the hardest things that, almost every other mom will not face. And you just get up and you make the best of the rest of your life. And I see so much in you of, that like God's still writing your story and that he didn't end it, just when part of your motherhood ended, quote unquote, you just like kept going and you're resilient and you made the best of like a horrible situation. And so I think that I'm so proud of that because I don't know what I don't know what I would do if something like that happened to me, which it did. But as a dad, like, I don't know. I feel like that would, you just dream up all these things about being a dad and being a mom. And when it doesn't go how you thought it was going to go, like, how do you move on and keep going and know that, like, God's not done writing your story? And I feel like you exemplify that a lot.
Good. That was a fun little pop quiz, wasn't it? Yeah, so I had on here, what was the toughest thing about being a mom, which I think I mentioned a little bit, like seeing you hurt, seeing you sad. Like I remember, and Brock too, I remember there was a little boy that was picking on Brock at school and he was making fun of him because he had a port in his chest and it stuck out and you could see what it was and he'd make fun of him or whatever. And I went to the lunchroom one day and his name was Scotty. I'm like, hey, Scotty, come here. You making fun of Brock? He's like, no. And I said, because I don't know if you've seen that thing in his chest, but if he pushes that and he's mad, you don't want to see what happens. And Scotty never picked on Brock again. And
Never
I
again.
went to Brock's teacher and I'm like, so I may get in trouble for this, but but just that's so hard. That's the hardest part about seeing being a mom is seeing you disappointed. Like if you don't, if you try hard for something, you don't get it and you're so sad. And like that's the saddest thing for me is seeing you sad. And then obviously losing Brock's probably the hardest thing of a mom. And we talked a little bit about what kind of kid you were, but you were just as you are now. That's how you were when you were little. You learned to walk on Christmas Day and you had a big audience and you loved that. And so you would walk and everyone's like, oh, yay. And then you'd fall and you get back up and walk. And, if someone started moving on to something else, you would just turn around like, hello, and want everyone to clap for you. But you were just fun. You would I would always say, like, Brock, if you said, Brock, don't ever touch this desk again. Brock would never touch it. You would touch it one more time. You wouldn't touch it after that, but one more time. You like to, push the limits. Have a fun story about you crying in the car.
Oh, my gosh.
And we were on our way out of town and you were crying. And I said, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to make you get out of this car. And so Brock and I pulled into a parking lot and made you get out of the car and you stood outside crying. And then I'd roll down my window. Are you done? You start crying again. And then when you were done, you got back in the car. So yeah, I guess I was.
I'm still recovering from that.
I'm sure
I still remember.
I didn't leave you though. So let's talk about, you grew up in this church, Sycamore Creek Church, from the time you were 6 months. And so you went through kids ministry and student ministry. And not only that, but you and Brock came to 2 services every Sunday of your life. It just wasn't even an option with me being on staff and your dad played drums every single week back then. You just did it, whether you were in a carrier or you walked yourself in. So tell me about some memories from kids ministry first and how you think that shaped you and what you thought about it.
Yeah. I think church was always just what we did. Like, it was never a question, obviously, if we're going, because you have to go. But it was just fun because we got to hang out with, our friends every week. And the teachers were just awesome. Like, Miss Charlie is someone, she still goes here, right? Yeah. Miss Charlie, she was just the best. And I just will always remember her. And I feel like I learned, those biblical principles at such an early age. Like, they're just hammered in your head. And I still remember, like, Easter Sunday, we would make, like, those construction paper things, and you put, like, Easter grass, and you make Jesus raise up from the back. But those things, those have stuck with me. And being on staff at a church now, I feel like I don't even notice. I'm like, oh, yeah, I have to be there for, 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. Like, I feel like I've literally done that since I was
you have
0.
Yeah.
So
what about VBS? Well, we called it VBA.
Oh. Vacation Bible School.
Yes.
All the motions. I remember you always were on charge of making the motions, and so you would practice in our living room, and we would learn them with you, and me and Brock would get on stage with you and teach them. And
Yeah, those
It's
were
just so fun.
great memories. Like,
Yeah.
gosh, I encourage people to bring their kids when we do VBS because
Yeah.
it gives you a break as a parent. Well, not me because I did music, but typically it'll give you a break as a parent, and it's just your kids love it, and they will be memories they will remember forever. So, what about student ministry? You get in high school, you become part of student ministry. Tell us about your experience with that.
Student ministry was so fun. The youth pastor that I had was so great. I remember he met with me every Tuesday or Thursday. He would come and pick me up from school and spend an hour with me and just read the Bible with me and teach me things. And I remember I could just like unload on him. And even when like Brock passed away, he was like the first person to like, you know, be there for me and like pick me up from the school even when everything happened. But it just gave me a sense of community. And I had great friends at school too. So it wasn't like it was my only, you know, Jesus loving friends. All my friends love God, but my church friends were just great, and my youth pastor was great because they were just a constant for me in like middle school. You know, when I was in a private school, it was same people in high school. And I remember even going in to college when I was kind of like throwing around the idea of like I might want to go into ministry. The youth pastor at the time was just awesome and like bringing me under his wing and like letting me. I was like, I think I might want to make graphics, and I had never done that. And he was like, okay, go ahead, run the whole social media and try whatever. And just, I don't know, I feel like I got a lot of life experience and ministry experience being a part of this church. Even like leading worship for the first couple times, the worship pastor, Jared, shout out to Jared, he let me sing up there when I was in the middle of puberty and my voice would crack, and he just kept scheduling me and believing in me. And then going into student ministry, like becoming a leader and starting to lead worship of my own for the first time, I remember I would do the craziest things. Like Bethel would like sing a song on Sunday morning for the first time, and I would like screen record it and try to sing it that night, and it was never good. It was never great. Never had the lyrics right, but I just feel like I got to get a lot of those like things that people don't get that experience when they go into ministry. When they like get their first church job is when they get to make all their mistakes. But I feel like I was so lucky to get to do that in high school and in middle school even.
I love that Jared gave you the opportunities he did, and I think that has helped form you, and it's been so awesome. We've known Mitch, you know, I've known Mitch since Pam was pregnant, and watching you two grow up and become in ministry has just been just amazing. How do you think that SCC shaped you? Like, when do you feel like you first really understood what it meant to be a follower of Jesus?
I feel like very early. Like, I feel like I got baptized when I was how old?
You were like maybe 8 or 9.
Yeah. I mean, I knew that Jesus died for my sins, like, very quickly. And I would preach the gospel in elementary school and tell people, like, I remember there's this lady, I forget her name, but I've seen her a couple times now as an adult. But I remember that she would drop her kids off at the bus, and she would always smoke. And so one time I told her, like, Jesus died for your sins, and you're not taking care of your body, whatever. And she quit smoking that day. And every time I see her now, she's like, and she, like, goes to church now. And she told me, I ran into her Walmart, like, a couple years ago, and she came up to me and was like, you might not remember me, but you changed my life because you were preaching the gospel and telling me to take care of my body. And I was like 8 years old.
Yeah, I remember our first pastor was at our house, and so he left here in 2002, so you had to have been 4 or less. And he was talking to me about something, and he said something was stupid, and you're like, Mr. Tim, stupid is a bad word. And Tim said, like, that kid's gonna be in ministry someday. And so yeah, I'm glad that you got that young. That's the whole purpose of, you know, part of us having kids in ministry is just to teach it, because, you know, we did a lot at home too. I was a big devotion person, but it's just different hearing it from someone else and having more kids around you. And then you ended up actually even teaching in kids ministry. You loved that, and I know Amy loved having you there because you're so vibrant, and, you know, so I know that she loved that. Did you feel pressure being a staff person's kid? Did you feel like you were under a microscope or any of those things? Like you had to do things?
Yeah, I feel like maybe at some points. I think that just naturally comes with it. But I feel like I felt that even with Brock Strong. Like, it's just built-in accountability. Yeah. Like, I can't be going around doing crazy stuff in this town because everybody knows me and everybody knows Christy Johnson and the Brock Strong Foundation. But I feel like it helped me in high school kind of, like, be careful about how I acted because people knew my parents. Yeah. But it was helpful, I think. It protected me from a lot. And,
In your memory, do you remember Do you remember it being like, oh my gosh, we have to go to church? Or do you remember like being excited about going to church?
No, I think it was always fun.
Yeah.
And me and Brock were always so involved, like even serving or, you know, I don't know. It was always fun. We'd get donuts or something like that. Like
Tim
even we were little
Hortons.
Tim Hortons. It was always so fun.
Yes. And so what do you think? So, you know, you're 25. I know you don't have kids yet, but you work in a church. So you see some of the same things we see. How do you feel about the kind of the world we're living in where everyone is so busy and they get their kids involved in everything, even if it takes up every Sunday? You growing up, being in a church all the time, how does it make you feel about like our kids today and the choices the parents are making? I don't know if I'm wording that correctly, but
No, I think there's a lot. I mean, we've come a long way, like with technology and things, you know, to protect our kids and to, you know, take things off. Like if you don't want your kids to see these things on the internet, like there's all kinds of things that are different than when I was growing up. But there's also just like a loss of the simple times. And I know that I'm sure from your perspective, like your childhood, it's very different. But from my childhood, it was so much like playing outside, I mean, we had a busy schedule, but not miserably. Like I always hung out with my friends in the neighborhood. We'd always run around, play kickball. And so I think that I am sad for the kids that won't get to have that or that have screens at such an early age. Like I know you go out to eat and you'll see like parents and their kids and they all have screens and they're not talking and they're not, you know, doing anything. But I feel like I remember going to restaurants and drawing on the tablecloth and, you know, playing tic-tac-toe while our food is getting prepared. So it makes me sad, but also the things that we like quote unquote miss are things that we can still do now. Like we can still encourage our kids to play outside. We can like those are like the things that build you, and those are my core memories growing up is playing outside and doing fun stuff. So yeah,
I think about how much you learned at church.
Yeah.
And so you know, these kids are missing out on that. I think a lot of times they're missing out on learning that stuff, and it's like I said, it's hard to do at home. So hopefully, you know, there's a lot of opportunities for kids. And when you have kids, there'll be even more opportunities. But I'm just thankful that you guys liked going to church. It wasn't ever, oh my gosh, I'm fighting with my kids in the morning. It was never like that. So I'm so thankful for that. And I think that has really shaped the person that you are.
I'm so grateful to have like such a boring testimony, like story
Yeah.
that I like met God when I was 5. Because being on the crib team at my church, like I film all kinds of stories of people that, you know, met God in prison or crazy stuff. And I'm so grateful that I'm like, well, I think I met him at Vacation Bible School when I was 7 and followed him ever since. But I'm so grateful. And as a parent, like that would be like get your kids in church because you don't want them to like have to wait a long time to know them, or even if they don't like click the way I did, like I just clicked at church and loved it. But bringing them and being persistent and just hoping that like those seeds and like those stories that they hear are going to be like memories that they can look back on when they grow up. Like, oh, I heard that before, or God wouldn't be such a foreign thing to them as an adult.
Yeah. How do you think having faith in your life has shaped your life, shaped your decisions? And when did you kind of know like, oh, I'm supposed to be in ministry?
Well, it's definitely shaped. I don't know where I would be if I didn't have faith. But I think growing up, it was definitely like Brock being super sick all the time. It definitely helped me get through that time of like, you know, God's going to protect him and everything's going to be okay. It gave me like a sense of hope, like a reason to get up, a reason not to be so fearful and timid. And then when Brock passed away, it kind of changed as like, it gave me hope for like eternity. Like, okay, like I'm going to see Brock again. And I don't know how I would have gotten through any of that if I didn't have like the hope that God had his hand on my life. And I think about that in between period, like the 2 years after Brock passed away, it was so like, I feel like so much of who I am today was made in those 2 years. Like I learned how to grieve. I learned like what it was like to face like real sadness. And I had to learn like what it was like to actually trust God that I was going to be okay and that my life wasn't over. And I wanted to be a math teacher growing up. And
You would have been a good math teacher.
well, Anna the other day in the car was like, I forget, like 10 times or 7 times 8 or whatever. I'm like, I have no idea.
Okay, maybe not.
Anyway, so I was going to be a math teacher, and I just felt this pull to be in ministry. And I didn't know what that looked like. And even you were kind of like, I don't know if you want to do that. And
you're never going to be rich.
You're not going to make a lot of money. Maybe you can do this and sing on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember leading worship one time here. And, typical, probably wasn't that great. Didn't go to school for music yet. So, but somebody came up to me and they were like, God gave me a vision of you like leading worship to like thousands of people. And so I think that you should really pray and think about, like, I'm not telling you like this is 100%, but like that's just what I see. And so pray about it. And so I prayed about it a lot. And that was scary to go into ministry. And I didn't know if I was going to love it. And I went as a lot of people don't have to go to school for ministry, like they just work, get a job at a church, whatever. But I was like felt called to like go to school for it, and that's like even scarier because you're putting all this money into something you don't know if you're gonna love.
Yeah.
Which I guess everybody faces in their career.
You decided to go to school far away. You've never been away from home. You're pretty close to your family.
Yeah, and so I remember being like, okay, God, like I will intern at the church. So I started interning at Sycamore, and then God nudged me more, and I felt him like telling me to like look at school. So I was like, okay, like I'll visit Liberty, because Jared had went to Liberty and Steve had went to Liberty, and so they had told me like it's great. So I was like, all right, God, like you're gonna tell me at college for a weekend visit if I'm gonna go here. And we went, and it was just like me, you, and Dad. It was just like a yes, like this is where I'm supposed to go. And so I moved 6 hours away, and I'm so thankful I did. Like, it was so good for me, but it was really scary. And it was kind of like the whole time you're in school for ministry, you're like, gosh, I hope I get a job that I like. Because, you see these professors are people that were in ministry for a long time and retired, and now they teach. And you just see, like, your friends that are older than you, like, getting in a church that they're not, like, that's not their style. And so I remember that was, like, my fear in college was, like, am I going to get in a church that I don't like? Like, God, I'm just going to trust you that you're going to place me. And then I ended up applying for an internship. Do you remember this? In Chicago, and was so excited. It was like an amazing opportunity, and stuff happened with the church, and it ended up going like they cut all their internships last minute. And I remember being like, what am I going to do? And there was like this rule that you couldn't intern at your home church. And so I was like, well, I have to just start applying. And I was super late to all these places. Like everyone had already accepted their interns. So I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like God just opened a door. And I was working at Starbucks and worked with somebody whose husband worked at X Church. And I was like, do you guys do internships? And she gave me the number to Trey. And I remember calling Trey like, hey, will you give me an internship? And I know I don't know really anything about your church, and I've never really been, but it sounds awesome. And it's just the perfect fit for me. And I don't know. I just see God's hand all over all of those like pivotal moments in my life. And there were so many times that like it couldn't have worked out the way it did, but God just had his hand, and I just had to trust him that, this door in Chicago was shut, and it made no sense to me at the time. But it's like God had a whole plan of like bringing me to where I could live at home and, eventually meet Anna. And it's just crazy to look back and think about all the times where things could not have worked out, but they just did.
Yeah. Also, something I think about going to school for music was, if you go to school in general, you have a final, it's a math final. You get it right, you get it wrong, you get your grade. But your finals were standing up and singing in front of like the American Idol judges, basically.
Yeah.
And
in
like,
German.
Yeah, and all these different things. And they're paid really not to tell you how great you are, but to tell you all the things that are wrong to make you better. And that was hard for you at first because you've always been good. You've always gotten a lot of attention for you're so talented. And I just remember your first one and you were like crushed. And we had to tell you like they're paid to make you better, not just tell you how great you are. So that's just a fun fact about if you're thinking about going into worship ministry and going to school for it.
You'll get crushed.
Yeah, Jared went through the same thing, so he knows what we're talking about. But that was really hard. So now that you are in ministry, what would you say the most challenging thing about being in full-time ministry is?
Oh, goodness. I think right now, because me and I don't have kids, so like the time commitment is like, it's just kind of our life. Like we just do that together. But I think the hardest thing is just the emotional pressure, I feel like, to be in ministry. Because I think growing up, like I always looked at, Jared and Steve and thought like, I'm going to feel different when I'm in their shoes. Like I'm going to feel this spiritual, like I know everything and this all knowing, like I'm closer to God than all these people. And it's just not how it is. Like you forget to read your Bible 2 days a week. Yeah. You get up and keep going.
Right.
But I think that dealing with people and having to mix in like conflict, like how do you handle conflict but also it's not like just work conflict or like, you know, God's in the mix of all of it. And so leading like a team of creative, like our photographers and our worship leaders, like it's so hard to, you know, oh, you can't do that, but you know, I love you and I walk with you. And I think like just the pressure of being people's friends, but also like being a spiritual leader in people's lives. Like there's a lot of pressure of like your actions and all eyes are on you. Like, how do you handle this? Like when something doesn't go your way, everybody kind of looks at you and you have to be like model what that looks like for our team. I think about our Christmas experience. We had we do Christmas crazy at X Church. Like it's a big deal and lots and lots and hours of practice go into it. And I remember that I got up there to sing this song that I'd practiced for like ever. I mean, I was so nervous about it. I even like FaceTime my vocal instructor, you know, worked so hard. And I get up there on our first experience and the piano doesn't work and so I can't sing. And I remember everybody like backstage, like I had to choose in that moment. Like I could be like, my flesh wanted me to be like, oh my God, I'm so mad. I worked so hard. Like, but it's that like in that moment you have to be like, it's literally not about me and nobody's going to walk away and remember that. And like, but they will remember it if I act like a brat about it and if I'm crazy.
And you had to go on the stage and sing like the very next song.
But it's like, I just remember that walk cause I was like on this little mini platform in the center. I remember that walk. I was like, I have to choose to like show people like, I don't care. Like, it's not about me because it really isn't. It's not about you. So I think just all of that.
Yeah. I agree. It's hard working with volunteers. Like in a normal job, you have people that work under you and, you know, they can lose their job. Well, we're always begging for volunteers in every church in the United States. And so it's hard to like not have really not anything to hang over their head, but you're just dependent on them. And sometimes if something better comes along, they don't want to do whatever you need them to. And then you're kind of stuck scrambling, especially as a worship team, because that's way more like if someone doesn't show up for guest services, I can kind of fill that in easily. But for the worship team, that's hard to fill in for the last minute because you guys practice and you put all this time and energy into it, and then people just don't show up. Okay, so I thought this would be fun. You're very talented. If people listening haven't heard you sing, they need to, because you just sang at our worship night, and that's obvious. I think one of the best compliments I've ever heard about you was from your pastor, Pastor Tim, when you had started working there for a little bit, and he told me, you know what I like the best about Tucker? Like, yes, he can sing, and we all know that, and that's obvious. But I love that even when he's not a part of the worship team, he is worshiping in the congregation. Like it's so authentic, and you know, he said you see people that have it on stage, but it's not authentic, and they're not like that behind closed door, and that how much he could really see your love for Jesus. And so that was a big compliment, I thought. So being in the spotlight, I want to know, what's the biggest compliment you got, and what's the biggest insult that you've gotten?
Oh my. Well, I used to leave my voice lessons in college in tears almost every time. Like, I remember I worked so hard on this German piece, like all night, and I don't know if I'm just not smart, but like in every foreign language I've ever taken, I've been awful at it. And I don't know. It's always just memorization. That's all it can be for me for some reason. Yeah. So I'd worked so hard on this, like doing the sounds. And I remember I sang it for him. And then the dean of the school of music was in my voice lesson. And he goes, you know what? You just don't sound good today. I was like, okay, like, is there anything? And he's like, I think that we just need to give it a day because you're just so off. And I thought I crushed it. Like, I was like, they're about to clap for me. Like, I sounded, and they're like, you just sound bad. But I think the best compliment I've ever gotten is probably like that. Like, just you're the same on and off the platform, because when I lead worship, I'm pretty expressive and pretty like jumpy, and I think that I always viewed that as like a bad thing, because you know, when you're like starting to lead worship, you're like figuring out like your style and like what you're good at. And I think when I interned at a church in college called Waymaker, and they were super like energetic, and I think that's where I kind of learned like, okay, like that's a good thing. Not that I feel like being at Sycamore, I was allowed to have energy, but I just didn't know. And so when I learned like, okay, I can do that, and it's a lot of fun, and like it's okay to like jump because you're so grateful of like what God did for you and whatever. And so I think that being comfortable, like growing to be comfortable in that, and to not feel like I'm being like the center of attention or I'm taking the spotlight, but to just know that that's how God wired me, and it's biblical, and it's awesome that, you know, God's given me that ability, and to be able to spread that onto like my team and be like, we're going to outwardly express how we feel, because this is what the good news that we know is crazy. So I think growing in that, people reassuring me like, you're the same on and off platform, and
I love
bring
that
me
about
life.
you. Well, we're going to wrap this up, but I'm so glad that you could join me. But I want you, this is a Mother's Day podcast. So if you could give some advice as someone who's now 25, lived with a kind of strict mom and all the things you've been through.
Kind of strict mom.
All the things you've been through. What encouragement would you give to maybe a young mom with young kids who, you know, that's the hardest time. When your kids are young, it's hard as a mom, because you typically do the majority of the things. I mean, I do remember, even though my kids were very good, days that I sat in the bathroom and just cried by myself, because it's the only place I could go, thinking like, I don't know if I can do this. So what kind of advice would you give, having grown up and, you know, you're 25 now, what would you give to young moms? What kind of encouragement?
Goodness. Probably just like press on, and it's going to get better. And I think I'm so grateful that there were things that, not you let up on, but there are things that you walked with me through, walked through me with, I don't know.
Yeah, you said it right.
And that we're friends now, and that we have a good relationship, because I see so many people where they have like helicopter crazy moms that are overprotective, don't let their kids live their life, don't let them make mistakes, and they turn 18 and they never talk to them again. Like, that's so many of my friends in college, like that was their reality. And I just remember I was the oddball, because like I called my mom and I wanted to talk to her, and I wanted to talk to my dad, and so just like let them live, but be there for them. And that's what I think shaped me the most, was not like the times that, I mean, maybe it's some of the times that you took my phone or did this, but it's like the times that were crazy, that I knew that you were going to be a constant, even if there was nothing you could do about it. And I'm grateful that we have a good relationship now.
So just press on, moms. Happy Mother's Day. We know it's a hard job that you don't get paid for. It's also one of the most rewarding things. Sometimes you don't really see that till your kids are 25 and having, you know, an adult conversation. But I just wanted to give you all a little look into my relationship with Tucker, and I thought it'd be fun to bring a different aspect into this podcast. So we hope you like it. Have a wonderful day, and happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the In All Things podcast. Our challenge for you today is to send this episode to one person. Seriously, think of somebody right now that could use this conversation and send it to them. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic ideas, please send them to podcast@sycamore.org, and make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Sycamore Creek Church, so that you can always see what's going on in our world. If this conversation helped you at all, make sure you share it, leave a review, and subscribe so that you don't miss out on a single episode. We love you, God loves you, and we'll see you next week on the In All Things podcast.